Homeland Security now, and there's a new report that said the United States had its eyes on 4 of the September 11th hijackers before they helped pull off the worst terror attack ever on United States soil. Knew of 4 of them before 9/11, but that the information, according to the report, was apparently never shared with other intelligence agencies. Now we have things like the Patriot Act and a national intelligence czar to try to oversee 15 government agencies, all created in hopes of making sure all tips and leads are vetted and followed up on properly. But are they working? And what have we learned in investigating terror crimes in recent years? Joining us now from Boston, the Homeland Security and Intelligence Analyst for Total Security Incorporated, retired Coast Guard Captain Ray Brown. Ray, good to see you. Secretary Rumsfeld was asked about this today and said he knew nothing of it. What do you make of that?
Well, I'll let the Secretary speak for himself. This is another case of the proverbial dots not having been connected prior to 9/11. But I do think that we are better off now than we were in those days just before September 11th.
There have been a lot of things from which we can learn recently. I guess you can go all the way back to the Cole, really, the attack on the USS Cole, but in the terror attacks in London, in Madrid, Sharm el-Sheikh even. What are we taking from that? What sort of informational opportunities are there?
Well, I think 2 things. First of all is that a terrorist does not get up in the morning and decide he's going to mount an attack. They will have been around the target long before the attack ever takes place. There will be logistics acts, personal acts, training, casing, and surveillance extensively. That is their greatest strength. They got to get it right. But it's also their greatest weakness, because those very acts can be observed. And if they're reported, the attack can be forestalled, either by the terrorist knowing he's been seen or by law enforcement authorities, security forces, taking them into custody.
You know, the only thing I can relate it to is the amount of information that comes into our newsroom. It's about this much compared to what they're dealing with. But getting all of that information in, disseminating it properly to all the people who need it to get to the news to the people is not an easy task. I wonder how well you think the government and its agencies are doing with that same sort of thing on a much grander and more important level.
Well, the government's gone through a great deal of reorganization, and while that's important, I think something that's lost in the dialogue is that the national strategy calls for the war against terrorism to be a public-private partnership on a scale like we haven't seen since World War II. Now, a lot of that is going on. A great many people in the transportation industry, from light rail operators to station managers to truck drivers, have been trained and in security awareness, not to be spies, not to do the job of law enforcement, but to do those things that law enforcement can't do. That is, observe and assess, report those acts that are occurring before a terrorist attack actually ever begins. And I think we've made some real progress in this country in that regard. Well over 100,000 surface transportation professionals have been trained, and so they can report things that intrude upon the safety and security of our transportation systems.
Captain Ray Brown, U.S. Coast Guard, retired. So far, so good. Thank you, sir.